I think this may be the earliest I've ever done a show. It's 8:30 in the morning, and I'm doing it now because the chemistry that has been racking my body, the cancer drugs, are also, I suspect, because this hasn't happened before this badly, have been really making me hoarse in the afternoon. It's been a problem anyway for years and years and years, but it's much worse now. But in the morning, I've got morning voice. My throat still gets clogged up, and and my nose is getting clogged up. You have to blow my nose. Let's see what else before we start the show. What else have I got to do here? Oh, let's check. Okay, audio is going through Wirecast. You little devil Wirecast, you screwed me up more than once. I am, well, I'm not recording, I'm not doing this on YouTube Live, even though I figured out the changes that they made a little bit earlier this year, I guess. Wirecast, it used to be easy to send a show up to a YouTube Live. Yep, there goes the nose, it's leaking. It used to be easy to send a show up to YouTube Live. Just push a couple of buttons in Wirecast and up it went. And then that stopped working. I'm not sure why. But I suspect it had something to do with this new kids thing. You have to declare whether your show is kid-friendly or not. And if you declare that it is, then YouTube won't let you do some things. I don't remember exactly what it was. I think a chat room thing. You can't do a chat room thing with YouTube. If you're doing kids, some kind of advertising. Because we're watching out for the kiddos. And you have to declare. Okay, sorry. And you have to declare whether your show is going to be is intended for a kid audience or might even accidentally have a kid audience. This show is not. If you're a kid, stop watching on YouTube. For the audio audience, so far, nobody's got their hooks into the audio audience yet. That just goes up. Well, it goes up from my website, triangletalkshow.com. That's where the audio file is hosted. It's part of Squarespace. It's distributed thanks to things like Apple Music, Apple or iTunes, I guess. I don't know what they call that anymore. They keep changing it. You know, the damn kids, they keep changing things. iTunes distributes the existence, the known existence of the audio, but a bunch of other things do. So does Google. Google Podcasts. What do they call that? I don't know. And now are on TuneIn. I sent them a nice little note. I noticed other podcasts were getting up on a thing called TuneIn, which is a way you can listen to a lot of radio stations live, but you can also get podcasts from them. Oh man, early in the morning turns out to be not such a great thing. Good voice, but the rest of my respiratory system is rebelling. I guess I knew that. I just don't pay attention to it because I'm not trying to do a show. How did I do morning radio shows? Well, for one thing, by the time I got to the station, it wasn't morning for me anymore because I was getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So all of this stuff, if it was going on, and it probably was over with. I mean, I just rolled out of bed 20 minutes ago. So iTunes, you can listen to radio stations on iTunes, but you can also get recorded stuff, podcasts and things. So if you need another way to get the Triangle Talk Show and you've got iTunes, you can do it that way. Yay. I think I was trying to get it on Stitcher. I got my old show on Stitcher, the old ham radio show on Stitcher, but I haven't gone through the minor steps it takes to get Triangle Talk Show on Stitcher. I guess I don't care that much. Why do you need all these different services? Just get a podcast app. Overcast, I guess, on Apple. And I use something called Podcast Republic, but nobody knows what that is. Pocket Cast, I think, is one of the more popular ones on Android. There's 1,000 of them. Just get an Android app and subscribe. Even Google has a podcast app, but it's not a very good one. It doesn't let you line things up and play them in order. At least I haven't. If it does, I haven't figured out how. I've got it just because I wanted to keep up with how some of these things worked, but I haven't played with it that much. Okay, so I'm not going to YouTube Live, even though I figured it out, and I think I was in the middle of explaining it may be the kid thing. It may be just some other things that the kids who control all of our technology today, kids, get off the lawn. It may be just changes that somebody made that broke the ability for me to easily do an upload from Wirecast, a stream from Wirecast up to a YouTube. But I figured it out. I figured out what needed to be done. But I'm not doing it today because about the only reason why I did the YouTube Live, other than it was a cute thing to do, because I didn't watch the chat, didn't watch for your feedback, because I don't have enough screens to be able to watch that. I really don't. I mean, this one has got the live thing. This one has got either Skype or web stuff. This one isn't doing it very much right now. Usually it's got my show notes, but there's no show notes for this, which means it's going to be another random show. And this one's got Wirecast. So I need a fifth screen to watch chat from. I've got more screens. I guess I could set another one up. Okay, hang on. Getting too juicy. Blow the nose. Yes. No more morning shows. Not unless I'm willing to get up at 5 o'clock to do an 8 o'clock show. And then the voice will be gone. Won't make any difference. So the reason I'm not doing the YouTube Live today is because I am eager to do the upload. The video part of the program. The audio part of the program is small. So it's a small file, 50 to 75 megabytes, depending on how long I talk. Doesn't take long to upload that. But the video version will be about 1 gigabyte. And it would take 20, 30 minutes to upload with the cable, Time Warner Spectrum cable internet service that I had. So I didn't want to upload it because it took a long time, and I had to sit here and wait and then finish filling out the stuff on YouTube and make sure it was playing okay. But I am looking forward to the upload today because I booted Spectrum out. Finally, Google Fiber came into the neighborhood. Well, they've been coming into the neighborhood since about this time last year. They trenched up the road. Look, if you look out the window there, there's it's not a major road right outside the window, but it's a minor road, but it doesn't have any driveway connections. One of those roads that the neighborhoods all feed into, and then it connects to two more major roads. And they trenched up that road. Now I'm tearing up too. It's really a bad idea. They trenched up that road about this time last year. stuck in the conduit, the orange conduit you've seen all over town. And then midsummer sometime, I guess, they finally put the fiber into it. But that didn't get into the neighborhood. It wasn't until November that they trenched into the neighborhood. And they did this thing called micro-trenching in my neighborhood. They didn't want to plant the major fiber because this is a small neighborhood. There's only about 65 houses in it. So they have a machine. Oh, I got some good pictures. I should have realized I was going to talk about this and dug up the pictures. It's going to take me too long now. They got a machine that digs a slit into the concrete or the asphalt of the street, about an inch wide and maybe 2 feet deep or so. And then they stick the fiber in that and they seal it up. And that scared me because that's why Google Fiber pulled out of, I think it was Louisville. But it might have been, no, I think it was Louisville, Kentucky. I think that's a town that they were planting fiber in, and they did it with micro-trenching. Maybe they did it all over town with micro-trenching. And then the micro-trenching failed. And they just gave up. They left. So I was scared that they were doing that here, but I'm assuming that they figured out what the problem was and they fixed it, made it work. So they did the micro-trenching in, I guess, late November. And we were just waiting for them to say, come on, y'all. Get connected. And that happened early January. Probably this has happened to you too. If you've been interested in an alternative to whatever internet service that you've got, you've been seeing Google Fiber ads around the triangle for a long time. They've been established in the triangle for a few years, and they have wired up some places years ago. They just got around to here now. I don't think that they are anywhere near a majority of the triangle area, but eventually they will be. And so everyone's been seeing ads for them on your social media. And they'll say, put in your address and see if it's available where you are. And we put in our address and they say, nope, it's not. Sorry. No fiber for you. But put in your email address and we'll tell you when it's available. So I did. Probably a dozen times. And they never emailed me. Or if they did, it got buried in spam or something. In any case, I never saw an email response. What I saw was notes on the neighborhood bulletin board, electronic bulletin board, that other people in the neighborhood were getting hooked up. And I go, well, hey, I want me some of that. So I checked that thing. Is it available again? Put in my address and boom, it was available. So I signed right up. And they came out and hooked up the house in late January. After I did the last show. So I'm on Google Fiber. The deal with Google Fiber is it is fast. My Spectrum was I was getting a little better than 200 megabits download, the stuff that comes into the house. Email and Netflix and YouTube, the stuff you watch and the stuff you absorb, about 200 megabits down. But for me, the more critical number, since I send large files to the internet, which most people don't do, the more critical number was the upload speed. And they offered only 20 megabits, which I actually saw about 22, 23. So, man, don't do any more morning shows. 20 megabits up, which was not great for sending large files up. It was worse back when I was doing the ham radio show because I did that easily once a week, maybe a couple times a week. And they were even longer shows than these, typically an hour and a half, 2 hours, and huge files. And I didn't do them live, and had to upload them for 30 minutes, 45 minutes or so. Fingers crossed that the upload was going to work. Usually it did. It was pretty reliable. The interesting thing was looking at the something just crashed out there, and Cindy's not here. Cat's just crashed something. Looking at a meter, a chart that I've got that shows upload speeds. Oh, I'll need that. Boot that up here. There we go. It looks like this. For those of you watching the picture, it's this thing here. It would show a good, solid, consistent 22 megabit upload going for a half hour or so. Hang on, I'm gonna really clear out the pipes here. That'll hold me for 20 seconds. Oh, geez. Don't do morning shows. What if you pay attention to technology, and you've been told when you do a speed test that they're not reliable because it's just showing you a burst speed, that your cable system or whatever you've got can handle its rated speed for a few seconds. But if you go any longer than that, it's gonna drop down. That's what you've been warned. But that wasn't the experience that I was getting. The little meter would go up to the 22 megabit line and just stay there as a flat line for the 30, 45 minutes it took to upload the program. So there's that. Anyway, it still took 30 minutes or so, even though it's maxing out the 22 megabits that I had. So the thing about Google Fiber is it is symmetric. Upload and download is the same in theory, and it could be as much as a gigabit, 1,000 megabits. It never is. One thing I'll say about Spectrum is that they exceeded their promise. They promised 200 megabits down, and I usually got about 220 to 250. If I was downloading something big from someplace that had the ability to send stuff out that fast. And the upload speed, they promised 20, and I would always get 21, 22 or so. So good on you, Spectrum, for that. In fact, I'm going to complain about Spectrum a little bit in a minute, and I was happy to leave them. But it was not a technical issue. They always performed well, and I rarely had an outage. I rarely had an outage for no good reason. If the power was out of the neighborhood, I had backup power here. I could tell. I could run a computer and it could run all my networking stuff. I could tell if they were up, and sometimes they were and sometimes they weren't. But it was rare that they would just fail. Now, my complaints with them are customer service. And I rarely needed customer service, but when I did, they were hell. So, told you 20 seconds. Don't do morning shows. So the fiber, the Google Fiber is symmetrical and fast. And so in theory, when I send this show up to YouTube, it will go quickly, within a minute or so, I expect. So now let's take a look at a speed test and give this a try. This is one of my favorite speed test sites. It is DSL Reports. And I gotta restart this thing here. and we'll see what we're getting. I was thinking about even editing this, the audio version of this to take out all the throat clearings, but there's too many of them. It'll take me all day. Okay, so if you're looking at the picture, you're seeing a slowly increasing speed for upload, and it maxed out at about 632 megabits. And then the download speed is getting up into the 900 category. It's floating around the 800s for the most part. Touches 900 now and then. So I'm actually getting faster download than upload. And that's what I've been seeing over the couple of weeks that I've had this Google Fiber. For some reason, I'm not getting upload getting up to the 900s, which is what I expected. I see it now and then, but I don't see it most of the time. And the computer, I've got several computers here in the bonus room above the garage on the north side of Cary. At the foot of Mount Belzoni. Jeez. A bunch of computers. Over there is the computer that is most closely connected to the fiber tap. Fiber tap is actually behind me here, but it goes on a piece of Cat 6 cable over there, and then an old piece of Cat 5 cable coming back over here. And in theory, Cat 5 doesn't handle gigabit Ethernet very well, so I got to replace that if I really care. Okay, so we were seeing 600 or so download, and I've seen it more typically in the 7 and 800s. And then it's going to report 846 up. It touched 900 for a bit. And I've seen a lot of 900s. Hang on, it's the nose. It's the nose. I'm remembering to turn the microphone off for this. Oh, and I was going to show it to you on the chart thing. I'll do it again. Because this is so fascinating to you, I'm sure. It's very erratic on the chart. It'll be over here on the right-hand side of the chart. Is it running? Yeah. Oh, there. Yeah, you can just barely see it on the right-hand side of the chart. Let me close things up. So the red is the upload, and once again, you can see it dithering from about 500 to low 600s. And then when the upload comes, the chart resets, and boom, whoa, we're up in the good 900s or so for a while, and then it drops down. This DSL reports, well, I like the site because they report a lot of different things. They tend to grab the last number they saw and report that as what you were getting, even though most of the download was sitting pretty close to a gigabit above. Well, yeah, it's giving me a max of 993, which is about as close to a gigabit as you can get. And then it dropped down some. Okay, enough technobabble. Anyway, that's the reason why I'm not doing YouTube Live, because the upload to YouTube is going to go fast. So why not? At least one time do it that way. Quick Cancer Cast update. I had my last and final chemistry infusion almost, was it 2 weeks ago? The time blurs together. Yeah, I think I'm in my third week. No, I'm going into my second week. And my strength is coming up. Once again, flat on my back for 10 days or so, just no energy. Enough to get up and go out to eat if we wanted to, but we only did a couple of times. I did start getting myself on the elliptical to try to get some strength back and some just do something besides just lying there watching TV. And starting to come back now. I'm not back to normal, even close. My attempts will exceed my ability in trying to get out there and do things, but it's a struggle. And now whatever grand point I was trying to make is faded from my brain. That's not a result of the chemistry. That's just normal. That's just what my brain has been doing. Oh, so it was in theory will be the last and final infusion. And then next week I get another PET scan and they'll see where the cancer hotspots still are. There was only one in the first PET scan. It was the top of my leg by the groin, where the giant lymph node had blown up that caused me to recognize there was something going wrong. So that was the only spot that showed up. In theory, that will show either that there's still a little bit there or that it's gone and no place else in my body. In theory. One will hope. And then the plan, which will be formalized and finalized after the PET scan shows what's going on. The plan is to do radiation at that spot, just to really knock whatever might still be around, knock that out. I'm no cancer expert, but I believe if you've got it in one little spot, it tends to migrate, tends to replicate itself and then migrate. So you can't have just a little bit of cancer in one spot, at least with this form of cancer, lymphatic cancer. I guess thinking about it and not Googling it and not being an expert in it, I hear that people who have prostate cancer, people being men, exclusively in this case, biological men, not necessarily people who present themselves as men. I'm learning new languages. Biological men, people who have prostates, can get prostate cancer, and if you're old enough, they don't do anything about it because it grows so slowly that you will die before it kills you, just naturally. So evidently that cancer also does not migrate. Otherwise they would have more to worry about. So, but this cancer, lymphoma, can migrate. It's got the lymphatic system. It's all there. Carry some cells from one place to another and get them to start growing again. Cancer experts are going, he doesn't know what he's talking about. So they'll be attacking it with radiation. And I don't know how long that's going to last. It could be just a few weeks. It could be a couple of months. And then, in theory, I'm cured. And it will have made a major dent in my 70th year on the planet. But then I'll get my strength back, get my hair back if I want it. Kind of digging the look here, the hairless look. But I guess I would get the hair back. What hair I had. Now, the stuff here on top, that was not really there, hasn't been for a long time. Little peach fuzz up there, but there had been hair around the sides. Okay, hang on. Clear the pipes. I was doing the ear, nose, and throat thing to try to find out what's going on with all this. And I put that on hold, of course, because you don't want to do that in the middle of something major like cancer treatments. But I'll go back to that. It would be nice. I would like to have a nice, clear, and fairly resonant voice that you're hearing now. All the time, all day long, anytime I want it, like most people who have voices like this have. I would like that. I don't know if I'll ever get it, but I would like it. Sit down and do a podcast and not have to think about it and not have to clear my throat every 20 seconds. That would be nice. What last thing I want to say about the cancer thing is I can't imagine someone going through this. I've got cancer light. Cancer light. The thinnest level of cancer. Well, melanomas and stuff, you know, I've had cancer before. A couple of years ago, I had a melanoma removed from upper chest. I did the typical skin screening that everybody should do. That I didn't do often enough, but everybody should do it. And the first one I had, everything was clear. The second one I had a couple of years later, they found a spot that they were, the first one they found spots that they were suspicious of. And they took a couple of biopsies and they came back negative. The second one, they found some spots and one of them came back positive. So I went in for the surgery on that, which is just inpatient local anesthetic. So you're aware of everything that's going on. I didn't want to look, but you're aware of what's going on. And they carve out a piece of skin, a diameter of not quite a quarter, I guess. And they take it back to the lab and are checking it out. I asked eventually what they're doing when they're checking it out, and they're just looking at it under a microscope. They're not reacting it with any chemicals. They're not culturing it or petri dishing it or anything I could imagine like that. They're just looking at it under a microscope, and they can recognize the cancer cells. And they look at the perimeter, look at the edge, and if they see cancer cells on the edge of the sample that they carved out of you, that means there's still cancer cells in you right around that edge. So they go back and they carve out some more. And they did that 3 times. And the third time they looked around the edge and they didn't find any cancer cells anywhere at the edge or close enough. And I don't know how close they need to be to make the conclusion that they got it all. And this is a surgical deal. There's no chemistry that comes after that. There's no radiation. They cut it out. And so I've had that one time. And we asked my oncologist, we asked her, by the way, do we get a little 2-for-1 bonus here with the chemo that I'm getting? Will it take care of any melanomas that are floating around my body that haven't been caught yet? And she said, if I recall correctly, she said, well, this isn't precisely targeted for doing those, but yeah, we'll sweep them up. Maybe not perfectly, but we'll pretty much sweep them up too. The chemo is going after any rapidly dividing, rapidly growing cell structures. Some of it targets cancer pretty well directly. Some of it, anything that's dividing fast. That's why the hair loss. That's why your immune system is compromised. So yeah, don't worry about the melanomas for until next year. And then they'll get checked out again, because those can happen anytime. You know, I'm one of those baby boomers that got lots of sunburns back when I was a kid. And they didn't tell me. Well, they probably did, and I didn't pay any attention. That's what happens later in life, because at that point you are invulnerable. You will live forever. Okay. Oh, I guess one last thing. The Rush Limbaugh. The past week or so ago, he announced that he has got stage 4 lung cancer, which caused Trump to give him the Medal of Freedom. What is that? The highest civilian honor? Something like that. He didn't offer that to me, but then I don't have stage 4 lung cancer, and I also haven't been ballyhooing for him to continue to be president for life on my daily radio show. I should mention that I could have been Rush Limbaugh. Well, not quite. He was starting to do national radio or big time radio back in the mid 80s. And back in the mid 80s, I had an offer from a radio station in Peoria. Will it play in Peoria? From a radio station in Peoria to do a talk show at night. Now, I have not been doing radio very much in most of my career. Most of my career was television editing. And I was tired of doing that. Hang on. Voice experts will tell you, don't clear your throat hard. Do it gently. Maybe that's what the problem is. I clear it hard. Lasts 20 seconds. Got to do it again. I've been doing this television editing for 15 years or so, and doing well at it, but wanting to get out of it, wanting to go back and do my first love, which was radio. Also had planned a motorcycle trip for, I was going to quit my job in Chicago. I knew I was going to quit the job in Chicago. Going to do a summer-long motorcycle trip and then go try to find a job in radio. And of course, life throws you a curve. The ideal job in radio plopped onto my desk. This was before the internet, kids. We didn't have the internet back there. We didn't have LinkedIn. We didn't have any of the services that find you jobs, or you can apply for jobs. There was a magazine, I think still is, broadcasting magazine. And if you were a radio station and you needed voice talent, a disc jockey or talk jockey, you advertised in broadcasting and you advertised in radio and records. And I could afford one and not the other. And I chose broadcasting. And a job popped up. I was in Chicago. A job popped up for I think they called it a nighttime talker. I didn't really want a disc jockey. I didn't really want to spin records, but that was probably what I was going to be doing. I would have rather done a talk show, although there were very few real talk shows out then. There were a few, and the conservative talk radio thing had not hit yet. And so that I wasn't really thinking that. Maybe I sort of was. Anyway, and now that some of the memories are flooding back into my brain, the conservative talk thing must have started to be a thing. Because I remember when I applied to one radio job later on, I made the point that I was not conservative. In my the demo that I recorded for them, I remember saying, "And I'm liberal." I remember saying that. So the conservative thing must have been a deal, because that would have only been a year later. Anyway, before I got on the motorcycle trip, this job popped up for a nighttime talker at a radio station in Peoria, which was about 100 miles southwest of Chicago, and a large market relatively. I had lived most of my life in Chicago, and I considered Chicago to be, I knew that it was the second largest city at the time in the country, but I just considered it to be kind of a normal big city. And a town like Peoria was a tiny town. As it turns out, a town like Peoria is a medium metropolitan area as the country goes. And then the bigger cities, New York, Chicago, LA, Denver, Dallas, they're behemoth cities. So this would have been a good deal. And I went down there and I applied. They brought me down for a tryout. Their nighttime guy was going to get, the evening guy was going to get bumped up to afternoons, and he was going to stop doing talk show all day and get to play records. And he was looking forward to that because he was running out of things to say. If you did a talk show in Chicago and were relying on telephone calls to keep the momentum going, you could get them. If you're doing a talk show in Peoria and you relied on telephone calls to keep the momentum going, you're doing I think the show was 2 hours. You could start building up a few in the last half hour, maybe. So other than that, you had to talk all by yourself. And you may have noticed that I've been talking all by myself for going on an hour here, and I haven't even started the show yet. I haven't. You'll know when I start the show because it'll sound like this. See, and that hasn't happened yet. So he was getting tired of that. Apparently I was built for it, or at least I am now. So they brought me down for a tryout, and he was doing the show, and I just sat in with him. I don't remember it very well. I was even more of a snide, snarky guy than I am now. Back then, I guess that was one of the things I was going to try to hang my hat on. I was in thrall of a talk show guy, one of the early shock talk. They would call him a shock jock, but he didn't play music. He didn't play music if he could get away with not playing music. And one of the shticks on his show was that the general manager, the program director would constantly tell him, you need to play more music. The audience wants to hear the music. They both know that wasn't true. They both know we all tuned in to hear this guy talk. So he would play as little music as possible. His name was Steve Dow. He was on several stations in Chicago. The big one everybody knows is WLS. And the interesting thing is, although he had major knockdown, drag-out fights with the management of WLS, guess where he is now? He's on WLS, at least last time I listened, in the afternoon doing his show. And those of us who were at the time were in our mid-30s. We are now mid-60s to mid-70s. So is he. That's his audience. He's doing the oldies show, but it's oldies talk. And he was, well, he was very good, and he was also very politically incorrect and not polite. He was among the first to introduce the idea of saying the word penis on broadcast medium. Broadcast radio at the time. Now everybody can say that. It's no longer one of the words you can't say. But I don't even need to push the explicit button for saying penis. Because kids, you're not supposed to be listening to this show. So I listened to him for a long time. In fact, I edited, as a video editor, I edited a TV special he did with the TV station I was working at the time, although I only met him briefly. But he was my role model. He was my mentor-ish. So I'm going down to Peoria. I'm thinking I want to do this kind of show. That's not the kind of show they wanted, but I'm dialing it back. And I guess I did well enough in the demo that I did with them live on the air. I sent them a tape of me talking. That's how they knew I could talk for 45 minutes or so, but nonstop about nothing. I don't think I've got any of those tapes back then. I don't think I copied them and saved them. I should have saved at least one. I sent a bunch of them out. Be fascinating to listen to today. I don't think I've got one. That's too bad. Anyway, they were happy enough with that. They brought me down to do the test on air along with their current guy. I didn't do a whole show by myself. And they liked that enough that they made me an offer to take the show. They were going out on a limb because I had one probably 45-minute tape and one 2-hour do a show with their guy. And I didn't steer the show in any way, shape, or form. I was like his sidekick for that show. He would have liked to have had a sidekick. We bantered fairly well. That would have helped fill up the time, but they couldn't afford to have a sidekick. They could barely afford to have somebody there at all. I think this was the mid 80s, and they were offering $18,000 a year as a salary. I was currently making about $65,000 a year as an editor. I was one of the higher paid editors in Chicago. So that would have been a big step down, but that would have been okay. It was livable at the time. I could have afforded to eat and put a roof over my head, and I had a fairly fat bank account because I was single for years, not much to spend money on. So I could have done it for a while. But I turned them down because I wanted to take that motorcycle trip, and because I was an active drug addict and my brain was fuzzy and I was deathly afraid. If one or the other of these hadn't been the case, I think I would have taken the job. I was desperately afraid that I was not going to be able to pay attention to the news and keep up with what was going on every day and do a show. So I turned them down. But it also made me feel like, well, if I can get an offer for this, I can get an offer anyplace. No problem. I got the talent. So on this motorcycle trip, I will clean myself up. I will stop smoking pot, stop drinking, and come out the other end fresh as a daisy and ready to rock or ready to talk, as the case may be. The part about cleaning myself up, that didn't work. I ran out of pot. I remember I was in a campground near the Four Corners. I was in Northwest Arizona campground. And pot ran out. I took a lot of pot with me. It's a real good thing I didn't get pulled over. I'd still be in jail today. I believe the statute of limitations has run out. The pot ran out. I was a hopeless drug addict in terms of making connections. Even I had a connection in Chicago. Somebody I bought stuff from. But being out there in the world, no clue how to do that. But there's liquor stores. So instead of smoking a lot of pot and drinking a little bit, I started smoking no pot and drinking a lot. And so that was a recovery from addiction fail. But the motorcycle trip finished. Moved to North Carolina because my dad was here, stayed with him for a few months, and got that radio job that I thought, I'm good. I can get a radio job anywhere. It took a few months, but I did. Back to Arizona, other side of Arizona. Maybe I was in New Mexico. Yeah, if it was other side of Arizona, I must have been in New Mexico, near the Four Corners. The Four Corners are Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and Utah. There's a little monument there. It's out in the middle of no place, and it is a little plaque, a round piece of concrete, plaque in the middle of it. You can stand with 1 foot in two states, bend down and put a hand in 2 states, so you can have your body touching 4 states at one time. And as I referred to it at the time, monument to man's ability to draw 2 straight lines. But it's the only place in the country where 4 state lines come together in one spot. Every place else, 3 at most. Someplace in Tennessee, I think, they advertise that you can go up on this knob and see 7 states from one place, which may be the only place you can do that, if it ever gets clear enough to actually see them. 7 states, is it? Or is it 5? I don't know. some magic spot. Western North Carolina, Eastern Tennessee. It would be, see if I can figure this out. How my geography is. It would be North Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, Kentucky. Those are the easy ones. South Carolina, West Virginia, maybe. And I doubt Ohio. I'm not sure I can come up with 7. And I don't remember what they advertised. It's still there. The air is almost never clear enough to do that. Big front goes through her. So speaking of air and weather, boy, am I tired of winter. We haven't had any winter yet. I don't know if we're gonna. No snow, but I mean, not really any winter either. Just barely ever dips below freezing. Weather is crazy. So, Rush Limbaugh. I know, long circle to come back to this. And we still haven't started the show. You haven't heard this. I may have to make this a second show. Rush Limbaugh's got stage 4 lung cancer, and he announced it. And on the social media, some people are going, good, die. And some people are going, we need to be, we may not agree with him. He may have done damage to the country, but he's got lung cancer. Give the guy a break. Pray for him or whatever. And so you're probably thinking, well, what do you think there, Gary? I mean, after all, I am able to do a halfway decent Rush Limbaugh impression. It takes a while to warm up to. But if I do some of the standard taglines, I can get pretty close to it. Like, greetings, fellow Americans across the fruited plain. It is I, L. Rushbo, or as Brett Whitmire said, Little Rush, so he doesn't get sued. Podcast-wise, probably not going to get sued, but when he was doing it back on real broadcast radio stations, the legal department wouldn't let him call himself L. Rushbo or Rush. It had to be Little Rush so that he was clearly doing an impersonation. I think you could tell that bozo here, the bald-headed bozo on this podcast, is just doing a meager impersonation. You might be able to recognize it, maybe just a little bit. But my favorite line that helps me get into the spirit of things is that I can do my program with half my brain tied behind my back, because that puts it just above my ass, which is where I do my best thinking. I don't think that's my best rush. I've done better rushes. So, what do I think? I've reached down into my heart of hearts to realize I just don't care. I don't care. I don't have any strong feelings about it one way or the other. I've seen other posts in the media out there talking about folks coveting that 3 o'clock or that noon to 3 slot that he has held for decades. And yes, I could have almost been the Rush if I'd done that Peoria stint, gotten my talk legs under me, cleaned my brain up somehow. I could have changed the entire country. I could have, hang on. And instead of, because Rush was just getting started back then too. He would have been 5-6 years ahead of me. But you never know. I could have gotten so good, so fast, branched out so amazingly fast, because I'm just that good, that instead of conservative talk radio taking over the country, instead of that, and the Tea Party and all the stuff that's coming Trump, after all that, it could have been a liberal wave, could have been a progressive wave that swept the country just because I had been the talk radio icon. Could have been me. The only thing that I'm thinking about in Russia's announcement is that I had made my announcement a few weeks earlier. And I could compare how he did it and how I did it. And I like the way I did it better. You can go back to Cancer Cast number 1. Of course, he did it relatively quickly. On his program, he took probably 10 minutes, and I took an hour. But if you condense it down to the line, I said something about, I went from, after I got the call from the oncologist, a call from the surgeon, I went from a guy who didn't have cancer, who had never thought about having cancer, who never considered the possibility of having cancer, to a guy who had cancer. And I don't remember exactly what he said, but I like the way I said it better. So see, had I taken that job in Peoria, the job in Arizona was never going to launch a national career. It's a much smaller town. It was not Phoenix or Tucson or even Flagstaff. It was a small town. It was not talking. It was disc jockeying. Although I did my best to talk too much, and I got fired for it, and got the memos about playing more music and things like that. That's what I learned how to do radio. So, yes, I could have changed the course of mighty rivers, changed the entire political course of America. And saying that, realizing that now, it is all my fault. It is all my fault, and I apologize. From the studio and the bonus room above the garage on the north side of Cary, nestled into the foot of Mount Belzoni, overlooking the beautiful Cary River Valley, this is the Triangle Talk Show. This is episode 76. Civics. Yes, second Civics episode in a row. After having talked for more than an hour before starting the show, I'm impressed with myself. February 10th. Oh no, I forgot. I made this up yesterday and I forgot to change the date. It's February 11th, just in case anybody's curious. 2020. Undecided voter. And I'm Gary Pierce. I am the undecided voter. An hour, more than an hour before actually starting the show. That ought to qualify for an all-time record for someone doing a pre-show dither. I want to claim that. Is there a Guinness World Record, any kind of a Guinness World's Record thing? This is going to be a 2-hour show, folks. I got an hour's worth of material. Settle back. As Hannity likes to say, buckle up. Hannity says buckle up all the time. Every once in a while, Rachel Maddow will say, buckle up. And I'll go, don't say buckle up, Rachel. That's a Hannity thing. Buckle up. We got a show. Undecided voter. That should make me coveted in the political spectrum. This handful of undecided voters. Well, for me, it's only going to be in the primary. Everybody knows what I'm going to do in the general. You know, I'm a liberal. I'm progressive. I'm a lefty. I'm more of a center lefty than hard lefty. But in general elections, no one's going to work hard to go after my vote because they pretty much know who I'm going to vote for. It's going to be 99.9% Democratic. This election probably going to be 100%. So it's the primary when I'll be coveted. And the last episode, we looked at the sample ballot, presidential preferences. All of those folks, if you're looking at the video, all of those folks all the folks that you've seen standing up there in the debates. How many names are here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 names plus no preference. A couple of the folks have dropped out. Marianne Williamson has dropped out. I think Cory Booker has dropped out. I don't think Tulsi Gabbard has. Yeah. 1 or 2 have dropped out. Andrew Yang is still in there. Michael Bennett's still in there. Michael R. Bloomberg is in there, and he has not been in any of the debates and won't be. Pete Buttigieg is still there. Of course, Elizabeth Warren, Tom Steyer. Did Tom Steyer drop out? No, I don't think so. And Bernie Sanders. And the only name I don't recognize at all is Deval Patrick. Saw that last time. Still haven't come across it. So among all those people, I should be a hot property. Not really having made much of a decision yet. Well, I kind of have, and I mentioned it in the last program. I'm leaning Elizabeth Warren. And I'm also leaning a ticket, which doesn't really come into play in the primary. The ticket I'm leaning is Elizabeth Warren on top and Pete Buttigieg. I mentioned that I did a podcast that mentioned Pete Buttigieg because I heard him on a podcast early on. I think it was with Pre Ferrara, very early on, and was impressed. You know, he was young, mayor of a medium small Midwestern city, South Bend, Indiana. I've been to South Bend briefly a couple times. Living in Chicago, South Bend's not that far away. I didn't know it well, but I know what medium-sized towns in the Midwest are like. So, okay, listening to him do that podcast, my impression was, well, he's doing this presidential run as just a way to get his name out there. And then he will have a nationwide profile 10, 15 years down the road when he's in his 40s and 50s and has some credibility behind him. You know, maybe he'll get a Senate run or a governorship or something to build his resume. But, and, you know, and as I said at the time, no snowball's chance in hell of anything this cycle. I would have said no snowball chance of hell for him being where he is now, much less winning. But here he is, neck and neck with Bernie Sanders into going to New Hampshire and coming out of Iowa. As they finally got the results from Iowa. And it turns out that he and Bernie were essentially tied. They're playing the game of inches thing in trying to say, I won. And Buttigieg, whoa, raining. Hard enough I can hear it, and it looks pretty gray out there. Buttigieg won the delegate equivalence. They got that weird way of adding up who gets how many delegates. Sanders won in both rounds in terms of the raw vote, by about 6,000 in the first round and about 2,500 in the second round. So they can both claim a version of victory in Iowa as the results get reported, you know, a week late or so. No more beating up on Iowa, but going into New Hampshire. New Hampshire primary is tonight. Well, I guess it's going on right now. I guess it began technically at midnight with a few towns voting, and now the polls are open in New Hampshire. So my podcast timing is always strategic. I slip these podcasts in when nothing else is going on. I think I did the last one around the State of the Union or Iowa or something, or, all that stuff. Because most of you will have nothing to do tonight than listen to this podcast rather than watch the results of the New Hampshire vote. And the 24-hour news jumping on it like crazy. I'm sure they've already reported the results of those towns that voted midnight. So I would be a coveted commodity, but I'm thinking Elizabeth Warren and then the other side of the ticket, just sort of daydreaming Pete Buttigieg. No snowball chance. That probably won't stick around. By the time we vote here, early voting in a week, I think, here in North Carolina, I may have changed my mind. An interesting thing about even getting as close to the idea of maybe this is the way I want to do things as I have is that it reduces the angst. I don't know about you as an undecided voter, assuming you are an undecided voter. Awful lot of people in my social media, they're banging the gong for one candidate over another. And I don't understand that very well. I don't understand it from the point of, well, you may like what that candidate is saying, what hook that they are hanging their campaign on right now. But none of that will transform itself into actual things getting done after the election. All of it is just a way to hook you and your vote in to get you to vote for them in the primary and then in the general election. The things that get talked about before the general election, they will have a little bit more to do with what actually happens when someone is elected, but not that much. Not for anybody. Not that much. No one seems to remember that. Maybe I realize that because I'm old. But no one seems to remember that all of the stuff that we got beat over the head with in the campaigning leading up to the election. Afterwards, after the election, most of that stuff never happened. A little bit of it, some of the big pieces, they got pushed toward, sometimes successfully and sometimes not. But real life takes over and lots of other things happen. And so just sort of the general tone of things, the general direction of things, the general feel of things, that's all that really came out from transitioning between the campaign through the election to actual governing. Trump is different. Well, even Trump is not totally different because he campaigned on the wall, and the wall was a thing for a while, and there's still no wall, and the wall is no longer a thing. It might come back in the general election, in the general election campaigns, that might come back. Probably will. But the things that he has pushed for, that he talked about before the election, he hasn't gotten a lot of that done. Even though he claims to have gotten more done than any other. Yeah, never mind. So I guess having claimed that I'm leaning Warren. I'm just leaning Warren. I mean, Bernie and Warren are not that far different in terms of policy, but they are miles apart in terms of temperament. And it's Bernie's temperament that puts me off. Warren is more small c conservative temperament. I think I would trust her to govern more and try to get the policies that she is running on actually into law and into effect in the country. And once again, even the stuff that she is pushing real hard for, most of that not going to happen, or not going to happen in the way that she's talking about. So, well, we'll see. Buttigieg. Who would have thunk it? And he's way ahead of Warren right now. So maybe I got it flipped. We'll see what happens. I'll see what happens up there in Iowa. Somebody, I don't think I think this was, I think this was on Facebook that I saw somebody making this comment. I don't think this hit any of the national cable shows that I watch. But maybe that's where it came from. I don't really remember where this came from. That Iowa, all of the left, all Democrats, everybody in the progressive side of things, liberal side of things, looks at voter suppression. All of the things that, voter ID and all of the things that are done to make it hard for a segment of the left-leaning voter population, usually the poorer and minority side of because they're not gonna get me with voter suppression. They're not gonna, I'm on the pinnacle of white privilege, middle class white privilege. They're gonna have to work pretty hard to deny me a vote by not having an ID or not having a place to go close enough to my home or enough days to be able to go vote. All of those things that, wiping me off the rolls early. So I can't figure out, I'm not allowed to vote today. None of that's going to work for me. It's going to work. It can work for a lot of people who are not sitting in my chair of privilege here, my throne of privilege. They're not going to get me. So we look at the voter suppression stuff, and nobody was saying this about Iowa, but people do say that Iowa doesn't. It's not inclusive. But no one was putting it in the point of, if you were going to design a system that would suppress the vote of a large segment of the population, especially the poorer, the minority section of the population, you would design it to be like the Iowa caucuses. Got to be there in person, on the day, spend hours, arrange for whatever else is going on in your life, childcare, things like that. If you wanted to suppress the vote, you would do it like Iowa, like the Iowa caucus. That's not a perfect analogy because it's in the primary. It's not the general election. They couldn't do that way in the general election. But Iowa's going to be different next year. I expect it will be. So let's see. In our version of the primary coming up in a couple of weeks, March 3rd, but early voting starting in a couple of weeks. I would expect that I should be somebody that would be coveted by all of the competition, not just at the top of the ticket, but across the ticket, the lower offices as well. Because I'm undecided. Well, most of the lower end of the ticket, I'm never going to hear from them. I might get a mailer or something. They can't target me very well. I'm not even seeing much on my Facebook feed from the lower end. I would think that they could target me by location at least, but I'm not seeing very much of it. Maybe it's because I just skip past all this stuff that is not from people I recognize. But I'm that here in the primary. I'm that undecided voter. I'm the one everybody wants. I'm the one. Are you the one? Or have you latched onto a candidate based on what I'm going to call our not very well considered thoughts? Sorry. Don't my note from the program director, don't insult the audience. I don't know. So, the other thing I was going to say before I get on to the rest of the undecided voter thing is that North Carolina, I was looking this up. North Carolina is in the Super Duper Tuesday. We got, I don't remember the total numbers anymore. I checked them. I tried to memorize them. I didn't write them down. California has by far the most delegates at stake in the at the Democratic Convention. But well, California's got the most delegates at stake. The but that I was going to, I realized was irrelevant. So forget that. I had a big point that I was brewing in my head, and I realized, wait a minute, that point is ridiculous. California's got the most delegates at stake. Texas has got the second most, and about half or less than the number of California. And then a bunch of other states, I think a dozen. Of them, North Carolina is got the most delegates. Virginia is close, just a few less, and other states quite a bit less. So we should be somewhat coveted, but the idea is that all of these candidates out there are going to be spending their media dollars, TV and radio. There's no radio anymore. Yeah, I guess there is. TV and the social media, all of their media budgets spread out among those states. And the thing I was going to say is that, in the general election, everyone knows which way California is going to go, and everyone knows which way Texas is going to go. And North Carolina is going to be the big toss-up state of those three states. We are the only unpredictable one, and I realized that, yes, that may be true, but it's got nothing to do with the primary. It's not the case for the primary. So California and Texas are going to absorb most of the electioneering, trying to persuade voters. And then North Carolina is a very distant third, and Virginia and whatever those other states are. So we're going to get some attention as we get closer and closer to our actual voting date, but that's kind of irrelevant too, because we will have been doing early voting for a couple of weeks. Starts next week. I think the 13th. So we'll get some attention. We're getting some attention now at the top levels. So lest this become a 3-hour show, I guess I probably ought to get on with it. President, Senate. Looking at the Senate race, got 5 people vying for the Democratic nomination for Senate. The 2 names that are near the top are Erica Smith and Cal Cunningham. Cal Cunningham with the most people saying that, he's the front runner by a lot, and he's got the most money, getting the most attention, has the backing of the Democratic Party, which is not apparently being neutral in this primary. I don't know exactly what the deal is with that. If I say he's got the backing of the Democratic Party, I may be in error, but it sounds like he does. It may not be the party officially, but under the, behind the curtain, he's the heir. He's the anointed one. And not Erica Smith. And then, so that leads to the interesting thing There we go. That leads to the interesting thing about Erica Smith's campaign right now, and that is this television commercial that appears to be for her.
Who's the Democrat for U.S. Senate endorsed by progressives and unions? Erica Smith. Who's got the courage to vote for Medicare for all? Erica Smith. The #1 supporter of the Green New Deal? Erica Smith again. Erica Smith is one of us. A high school educator, engineer, state senator, and ordained minister. Erica Smith is the real deal. Vote Democrat Erica Smith for U.S. Senate, the only proven progressive. Faith and Power PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising. Who's the Democrat for U.S. Senate?
I didn't really mean to make that play twice, but what the heck?
Courage to vote for Medicare for all. Erica Smith.
So Faith and Power PAC is a Republican group. A Republican-supported group. It's actually fairly new, if I understand it correctly. They just were formed a month ago or so.
Democrat Erica Smith for U.S. Senate, the only proven progressive. Faith and Power PAC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
So, yeah, what's the deal with that? It sounds like...
You want to support Rollerbach Unfiltered? Oh. Be sure to join our...
Don't want something else starting. I keep turning off autoplays on YouTube, and they keep getting themselves turned back on somehow. You damn kids, get off all on. So that commercial sounds like it is supporting Erica Smith very strongly. It hits all the points that I think probably she really does support. And yet it is not... It's not for her. It is done by a Republican group. And the goal is strategic. They think that Cal Cunningham has a much better job of beating Tom Tillis in the general election for our next North Carolina senator. And Erica Smith has a much weaker chance of winning the general election. So they would love to see Erica Smith get... win the primary and become the candidate for Senate. Just some of that sneaky backdoor stuff that politicians do, but done maybe better than we've typically seen it done. Can I get back to that?
Who's the Democrat for U.S. Senate endorsed by progressives and unions?
Okay, yeah, progressives and unions. That's probably true.
Erica Smith. Who's got the courage to vote for Medicare for all?
Medicare for all, that's one of those difficult toss-up things that the more left-leaning side of the Democratic Party, the fracture that we've got going on currently within the Democratic Party, some people absolutely want to see Medicare for all or single payer, and I do. And I think I realized that a lot of people are a little bit too scared. I did a show called You Love Your Health Insurance. I think a lot of people are a little too scared to push for that in one big fell swoop thing right now, this election. So you might shy away from that. Maybe. I don't know. I don't like the idea of piecemealing our way up to it, but I'm not opposed to the idea that if that's going to win the election and put a Democrat in the presidency and in the Senate. Sorry, don't mean to cough right into the mic. That's really loud. If that's going to take control of the Senate and the White House, well, let's do it that way, and then we'll work on our single payer. What else?
Erica Smith, the #1 supporter of the Green New Deal.
Oh, the Green New Deal. That is... That has got people scared. The Green New Deal is it's an aspirational, it's a document. It's got specific points. It doesn't have very much on how to get from here to there. And it's a lot more than just the climate. It's kind of the progressives' wish list all tossed into one thing. And it is, as such, once again, it will scare the center. It will scare any on-the-fence people that could vote Democrat, could vote Republican. you push that real hard, that's going to scare them away from the Democratic Party side of things. So Erica Smith probably endorses it. Any Democrat could, as an aspirational thing. Yeah, these are things that we are going to work towards, but they're not all going to come true in the next 4 years. But let's scare some folks by pushing that real hard.
Erica Smith again. Erica Smith is one of us, a high school educator, engineer, state senator, and ordained minister.
Okay, I don't see any problems with that other than they are, by saying those things, they're trying to make this really look like this is her commercial and not by somebody from the outside.
Erica Smith is the real deal. Vote Democrat Erica Smith for U.S. Senate, the only proven progressive. Faith and Power Pack is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Interesting. Okay, now go away because you're going to try to autoplay me. Oh, autoplay is on. Turn it back off. There we go. So who am I going to vote for? Cal Cunningham or Erica Smith? Somebody in my Facebook line of things tossed a tar and feather Cal Cunningham post my way, a link to some articles in not the major media, minor media, and really lambasting Carl Cunningham and the way he is being, at least in behind the curtains, pushed by the Democratic Party. I don't know. He's running commercials himself. They're positive for him. He won't even mention Erica Smith because if you're the leading candidate, you don't mention your competition. He's just doing positive stuff that he would do. Veteran, sounds like a good deal. A little bit hard to tell. I need to look into it a little bit more. The tar and feather, the mudslinging about him, I don't trust that either. I certainly don't trust it. But probably he's going to be the candidate. He's got the money to spend. That tends to be what makes things work. All right, I'm going to cross this here. Looked at this on the last show. This is, I wanted to say a little bit more about it. This is the map that the North Carolina legislature has put out, the interactive map, really good map for telling what district you're in for Congress and for your state House and Senate representatives. And it turns out not only have I been moved from District 4 to District 2 for my U.S. House representative, I've been moved in for my North Carolina House as well by a little bit. So my current Cynthia Ball is my current North Carolina House representative, and I'll be moving out of her district and into a newly created district that has no incumbent. So I got more learning to do, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Don't do a morning show. Oh, so here is the current District 4 that I'm in right now. Orange County over here, and there, at that level of the picture, you can see the county lines. Orange County over here excludes Durham County. Durham County is in District 1, and then makes an incursion into the middle of Wake County to scarf up a lot of Raleigh and a lot of Cary. So that's what District 4 has looked like. Oh, come on. That's what District 4 has looked like up until now. From the last gerrymander to the next, here's the next gerrymander. Watch how District 4 changes and watch how District 2 changes. So now District 4, well, for one thing, District 2 becomes just the lower 3/4 of Wake County. So if you are in Raleigh and Cary, Garner, unincorporated, anywhere in Wake County, pretty much south of the 540 line, you're in District 2. Most of you used to be in District 4. Sorry. But the bigger change, at least geographically bigger change, is District 4. Because look what's happened to that. That used to be Orange County and sliding into a little bit of Wake County. Now it's Orange County, Durham County, which had been in District 1, Granville County, Franklin County, which had been in District 1, Chatham County. District 4 geographically has become much bigger. It's still gerrymandered to be safe Democrat. And so is District 2, gerrymandered to be safe Democrat. But the lines have changed considerably. So once again, if I can get things to move here. Here's where we were. And here's where we are. And then again, I've also been gerrymandered out of my North Carolina House district. And where does that come in? Looking at my ballot, U.S. House. So U.S. House is going to become a district that has no incumbent because George Holding has decided not to run. But at least for the Democrats, I mean, Democrats no incumbent anyway because it was a Republican district for the past cycle. So as I look across the Democratic contenders, I don't recognize the names very well. Governor Roy Cooper, that's an easy one. Lieutenant Governor, North Carolina being, don't know if it's odd for states. It's odd if you think about the presidential election. You don't vote for vice president. Well, you do, but it's one ticket. In the primaries, you don't vote for vice president at all. The president just selects, presidential candidate selects who's going to be the vice president. In North Carolina, the governor and lieutenant governor are separate races, and right now they're separate parties, often are separate parties. So we will get a lieutenant governor choice. I don't recognize any of these names. Here's where your undecided voter really comes in. I have no idea. No idea. I'm looking for my North Carolina House, and I don't see it. And what that tells me is that there's only one candidate. And if there's only one candidate who has filed for it, they become the primary winner. And I don't know who that is. But I may find out in a minute. We'll see. What else have I got here? I guess I want to I want to step back to the presidential campaign for a moment. I set some things up that are a little bit out of order, maybe. As I had mentioned, Mike, we are getting some advertising here in North Carolina for the presidential candidate. Mike Bloomberg, of course, is the guy who's spending just phenomenal amounts of money. And I don't see most of the ads that are appearing on TV because I don't watch enough TV to see very many ads. I do watch the local news, and this is where a lot of these ads show up. So I did see this one, and it struck me immediately as something pretty interesting.
He's been a leader throughout the country for the past 12 years. Mr. Michael Bloomberg is here.
Leadership in action. Mayor Bloomberg and President Obama worked together in the fight for gun safety laws, to improve education, and to develop innovative ways to help teens gain the skills needed to find good jobs.
At a time when Washington is divided in old ideological battles, he shows us what can be achieved when we bring people together to seek pragmatic solutions.
I'm Mike Bloomberg, and I approve this message.
He's been a leader throughout the country for the past 12 years. Mr. Michael Bloomberg is here.
So what impression did you get if you heard that or saw it just here for the first time, or maybe the first time you saw it? What impression did you get from that ad?
Leadership in action. Mayor Bloomberg and President Obama worked together in the fight for gun safety laws, to improve education, and to develop innovative ways to help teens gain the skills needed to find good jobs.
If you're only hearing the audio, all the pictures that are going along with that voiceover are Bloomberg and Obama together.
At a time when Washington is divided in old ideological battles, he shows us what can be achieved when we bring people together to see.
Okay, and so that's Obama's voice, and then still pictures of them together.
Seek pragmatic solutions.
I'm Mike Bloomberg, and I approve this message.
And the last picture is Bloomberg and Obama shaking hands, and on the screen together. Well, what do you think that is? I mean, it sounds like an Obama endorsement of Bloomberg, doesn't it? Obama's not endorsing anybody in the primary. He will endorse anybody, including Bernie Sanders, who I guess he would rather not see get the nomination. He will endorse the nominee, some more enthusiastically than others. But didn't that commercial sound like an Obama endorsement of Mike Bloomberg? That's the impression that I got. I knew it wasn't, because I knew Obama wasn't endorsing anybody. Other candidates are doing that sort of thing. Bloomberg's not the only one that's doing it, but that may be one of the more brazen ones. Okay. How am I going to make up my mind as an undecided voter? President, I've kind of made up my mind, unless I see something weird happen between now and whenever I vote. That'll probably be Warren. And as I was mentioning briefly an hour ago, that it's a little bit freeing. You lose a little bit of that anxiety about who am I going to vote for, when you even sort of make up your mind, and then you start looking at things from a different perspective. You start looking at that comparison of, well, there's my choice and there's the alternatives, and as they talk and say things, are we reinforcing my position? Are we chipping away at it? It's an interesting feeling, interesting gut feeling, how that changes when you've made sort of a choice. Okay, how am I going to figure out the rest of it? Cooper is easy. Well, fortunately for me, the League of Women Voters has, Wake County and nationally, has come up with their election guide. It is not endorsements. League of Women Voters is, first of all, nonpartisan, and they don't endorse candidates. They just come up with information, and they dig deep to come up with information about candidates. And they just released their Voter 411. And this is what I'm looking at here. The Vote 411 Voter Guide they've done it for the entire country. You can find their voter guide everywhere. And the page I'm looking at right now is for District 4, and looking at who is running in District 4. David Price is running again. David, you're getting too old. Pass it off to somebody else. And a guy named Daniel Lockwood is running against him. And if you're looking at the picture, there's a lot of detail about what each of these two guys is going for. They sent questionnaire to, I guess they can do this. They got their voter guides all the way up to the level of president. And I guess they can send their They're questionnaires up to a certain level. The presidential candidates are not going to answer the League of Women Voters questionnaire, I don't think. They dig out stuff from other ways. I'll take a look at that in a minute if I can. But at the level of congressional candidate for the state, they can easily ask their questions. And here's an interesting comparison between Dan Lockwood and David Price. First question is, upon election, what do you think is the most important policy or action for you to accomplish in your first year? David Price, who sits on the as the chairman of the Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development Appropriations Subcommittee, so his most important thing to accomplish in his first year is housing affordability. Daniel Lockwood's is an energy, shifting toward a carbon neutral energy production. So those are very different. Both of them probably important, and maybe one is more important to you than the other, but they're very different as first things to do. So a bunch of, well, let's see, how many different questions did they ask? 1, 2, 3, 4. So four questions, pretty much, just 4 questions. And you can compare, the candidates pretty well. Once again, they're not doing any endorsement. News and Observer will do some endorsements. Indie Week will do some endorsements. I looked to see if they had any out yet, and they don't. Other groups will do some endorsements, some from a more specific interest perspective, Sierra Club, things like that. I've seen endorsements in the past. If you're looking for someone like-minded to you to have researched the candidates some and made a decision, you can look for the endorsements. But from the League of Women Voters, it's just going to be information. It's going to be information that they ferret out from the candidates. It's the candidates saying their things and not an analysis. So at that level of things, it is useful, but you have to put your own skeptical eye on, well, what do I think about what these candidates are saying? They may be saying things that they think I want to hear, and they may or may not be any good at being able to follow through on that. So it's not a perfect system. It's not going to tell you everything you need to know, but it will help. There's no perfect system. Here, perfect is the diabolical enemy of the limp across the finish line. Not even the good. There's no good way to find out all this stuff. Somebody's been in office like David Price has for a long time. You're going to get a pretty good idea what he's all about. Someone who's competing against him, very tough. So let's find, there'll be a link to find this stuff easily on the Triangle Talk Show website, which is triangletalkshow.com. If you want to look for yourself at everything that I've talked about here, but mostly to find this voter guide. But it is called vote411.org, vote411.org. And it is pretty easy to find your candidates in your location just by using your address. You can enter your address or enter your location, and they present it in a variety of different ways. You can find out just what's going on. If all you want to know is the candidates that are going to be on your ballot, you put in your address. If you are more politically curious and you want to see what's going on around you, then you can look at all the races and everything that is going on around you. And let me see, all races. And I've got to select North Carolina. And here you can see every race from president on down in each, well, every party. It's not each because there's Green Party and Libertarian Party. I think that's it. So president, U.S. House, U.S. Senate, governor, commissioner of agriculture, auditor, attorney general, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, secretary of public instruction, treasurer, and then the individual districts. And if a district isn't listed, and not everyone is, we will be voting for a candidate in every district in the general election. All of North Carolina's House and Senate districts. But not every one of them will show up in the primary because a lot of them are only have one candidate running. These are relatively small, and in many areas, they got an incumbent, and no one's going to go up against the incumbent. And I don't think there's any cases where it's so solidly gerrymandered that there won't be an opposition candidate. But that may be the case in a few of them. But in any cases, we look at this long list, you can see that there's a lot of districts that are not represented. And let's see. Senate. See, I think I'm in Senate District 41. Oh, I got to go back to the map. Hang on. I got to go back to the map and see where I am. Where's that map? That's not the map. That's not the map. There's the map. Okay. North Carolina Senate. Let's dig into my house. Can I find myself here? Yeah. Easy to find me. I'm just south of Lake Crabtree here in the bonus room above the garage on the north side of Cary. I'm in here somewhere. And this is, okay, North Carolina Senate District 16. Where was this? Oh, there we go. North Carolina Senate District. Yeah, it doesn't show here. That's Wiley Nichols' Senate District. And I guess he's got no competition for the primary. Even though I saw one of his yard signs on the street down the road a little bit. I guess he wants folks to remember, I'm your guy. But Senate District 16 is not showing up here. Okay, so where am I in terms of the House? This is where things changed. Yeah, I'm in a neighborhood over on this side. And this is the district I used to be in, District 49. This is the district that I am in now, District 41. So let's see. And I didn't see that in my ballot. So why didn't I see that on my ballot? House 41. Yeah, not showing up here either. I think there's a way to go find out who the one person, I think maybe Ballotpedia would show that. I'm not going to take the time to look it up now because we're at 2 hours. And I showed you what I wanted to finally get to, which was that League of Women Voters Vote 411. That was what this whole show was going to be about. And it turns out to be the last 5 minutes. Sorry, Diana. Diana Wynn, president of Wake County League of Women Voters and one of the few organizations of stature that has recognized the Triangle Talk Show as a potential medium of communication to the public. Get a few more of those, and we may get a public to be a medium of communication too. She believes in me. Thank you, Diana. So vote411.org, and you can find your way to at least information about every candidate at just about every level that is going to be on your ballot. And you can vote more informed than you ever have before. And so let's wrap this up, and I'll see how long it takes to upload probably a 2 gigabyte file to YouTube on my new Google Fiber. Yay. And here we go. Episode 76, Civics, Undecided Voter, February 11th, actually, with me, Gary Pierce. I am a voted undecided voter. I didn't vote yet. I could have voted this election absentee. I will vote early, most likely. And after I go through this and figure out, thanks to League of Women Voters, and maybe look for endorsements, but I don't think they're going to come out early enough. Maybe they will. Who to vote for? I'm currently the undecided voter. And that is it for this episode of the Triangle Talk Show. Thanks for listening and or watching. Over and out.